Hey everybody, welcome. Good evening. So good to see you all. We're going to get started in just a second. Give folks a couple minutes to get logged in here. It's great to see people in the chat already. If you haven't already, maybe drop us a note in the comments section to say hi and introduce yourself. And like I said, we'll get started here in just a minute. Great to see you all. Welcome. Again, we'll get started here in just a second. Give folks a chance to get logged in. I've got people from all over. So good. New Hampshire, California, St. Louis, Oregon, Wisconsin. Colorado. Welcome. California. Welcome. Just one more minute here. We'll get started. Welcome, Philly Birds in Portland, Oregon, Joshua Tree. We've got Albuquerque, New Mexico, my hometown. Welcome, good to see you, man. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is our live stream, Fueling Sickness. I'm Roddy Hughes, an organizing strategist for the Sierra Club's Beyond Dirty Fuels campaign. I'm here in New Mexico, and which, as maybe some of you know, is super windy today. The wind's howling outside. Just took the dog for a walk, and it's pretty chilly out. But love it here in the mountains of New Mexico. Tonight, we're going to dig into an important report published by our friends at Physicians for Social Responsibility. Our Dirty Fuels team at Sierra Club is always worried about the health impacts of fossil fuels, and it's important to have this kind of data to back up what we already know, that the oil and gas industry, the impacts of this industry can be measured and should be measured in lives lost. It's a huge impact on people and entire communities. This report and our event tonight are timely. You know, as many of you know, last week, the Trump administration rolled back the endangerment finding, and there's so many other EPA rules that have been done away with. And it means our health is at jeopardy. Greedy billionaire corporations are getting rich by externalizing the cost of their operations. The less they have to worry about their pollution and their waste, the more profitable they are. And it's us, and especially low-income Black and brown families that live near industrial facilities that suffer the most. So tonight, we've got a pretty great lineup. Jasmine Vazine will start us off with a political grounding. We're here to talk about the climate environmental issues, but there's a lot more happening around the world, and Jasmine's does a great job of kind of connecting all of the issues. After that, we're going to hear from Manning Rollerson from Freeport, Texas. He's seen firsthand what chronic exposure to pollution does to family and communities. And after Manning, we'll hear from Dr. Lalitha Sirapapani, who will talk us through the PSR report. And then Claire Dorner from the Sierra Club Federal Policy Team will tell you how you can take action. After that, we're going to have plenty of time for question and answers. So please stick around till the end. And a note about this broadcast, we're live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we're tracking all the comments from all those platforms. So throughout the program tonight, please drop any comments or questions you have in the comments section. We're tracking them, and we'll get to them at the end. So love that part of the program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jasmine. Jasmine's the Deputy Director of the Beyond Dirty Fuels campaign. And again, I just always appreciate her analysis when it comes to tying our environmental justice and climate work to kind of issues of the day. So Jasmine, I'll turn it over to you.
Hear me? It's so great to see so many folks from all over the country on our stream tonight. Again, my name is Jasmine Bazine. I'm a Deputy Director with Sierra Club's Beyond Dirty Fuels campaign, joining you today from the unceded Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Shawnee lands, otherwise known as Nashville, Tennessee. And I am here today to open our call by grounding us in the moment that we find ourselves in. We have seen a complete oligarchic takeover of our democracy aimed at robbing the working class blind and trying to entrench us in a society structured to only benefit billionaires. The current administration is working in lockstep with corporate interests to work through the authoritarian checklist, pressurizing the working class, stripping away critical social structures and laws, and using shows of force to instill fear across the nation. This time last year, I was living in Los Angeles, and I saw firsthand the beginning rumblings of this administration's agenda roll out across the city. The militarized takeover of MacArthur Park, and the resulting organic network of community members mobilizing to protect our neighbors from being kidnapped off the streets. Now, a year later, we've seen a wave of violent federal deployments in the streets of Portland, DC, Memphis, Minneapolis, as well as many other cities, big and small, across the country. What you won't see on the news is the incredible resistance that people from all walks of life are showing in the face of tyranny. Minnesotans have been standing strong for weeks now, showing how we can build a resistance movement even in below freezing temperatures, and showing the dedication that it takes to show up day after day to fight back against the erosion of human rights. We've seen this a kind of authoritarian takeover propped up by the mega wealthy many times over in history. And from that history, we know that the only way out of where we find ourselves is to come together in a unified force of people power, taking on not just the politicians that are destroying our Constitution, but the corporations that brought them into power in the first place. On the Beyond Dirty Fuels campaign, we focus on bringing about a transformation in society to move us away from extractive, exploitive economies into systems that are regenerative and supportive for the good of all. And in order to bring about that future, we have to take away the egregious power that fossil fuel companies have at every level of our governing systems, and instead make them pay their fair share of taxes, pay to clean up their mess, and cover the costs for the medical bills and environmental damages they've created by spewing pollution in our communities for decades. This industry gave over $500 million to influence our last presidential election, and they have gotten what they paid for: a complete deregulation of environmental agencies and legal systems communities in this country fought so hard to put into place 50 years ago to provide clean air, clean water, and protect the health of all. We are all already feeling the pressure of the dictatorship that fossil fuel executives have brought to our doorsteps in the name of greed. Our community members are being disappeared off the streets. American citizens are losing their lives protecting their neighbors. Our constitutional rights are under attack. Climate disasters are ever on the rise, and the costs of living have only gone up in response to absurd tariff and tax policy. And with last week's rollback of the critical endangerment finding, in a year of rollbacks of vital environmental and social support laws, it is very clear that our government does not care about human life. We know that living, working, or going to school near fossil fuel extraction or use causes chronic health diseases like asthma, raises the rates of cancer, and can cause reproductive effects that impact generations. Proximity to this kind of infrastructure is directly killing communities across the country, and the fast tracking and rapid escalation of new fossil fuel pipelines, power plants, and extraction projects are not compatible with protecting life. Even if the governmental system we find ourselves in do not care for our fellow neighbors, we still do. And we have a new world to build out of the ashes of the one we find ourselves in through collective visioning of us all that puts life, dignity, and justice at the forefront. The world is not just created by the morally abject wealthy who find themselves in power, and they will not win if we do not let ourselves believe their delusions. What does the world that you want to live in look like? What does a world that supports the working class and the futures of our children look like? That is the world we have to come together and bring about now. And it will exist if we make it. The fact that you are all here on this call means that you believe in the future. And if you believe in the future, then we've already won. We just have to do what all of the movements before us have done. We have to support each other, protect each other, and be organized. It only takes two people to create momentum to make change. And you don't have to be the one leading an entire movement, but I'm sure you can coordinate a friend or two or four to do something positive for your community. Organizing doesn't have to look any one specific kind of way, and you can create positive change and ripple effects in whatever ways come easiest to you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for caring, and welcome to our network. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you, Roddy.
Forgot to unmute. Thank you so much, Jasmine. So good. I always appreciate your analysis. I love that line towards the end. If you believe in the future, then we've already won. We just have to do what all movements before us have done: support each other, protect each other, and be organized. That's the key right there. Our next speaker is Manning Rollerson, and Manning embodies a lot of that, actually. If we believe in the future, we've already won, and he is all about supporting and protecting and organizing his community. He's lived in Freeport, Texas, all his life. Freeport, if you're not familiar with the Gulf Coast region, is just a little southeast of Houston. Manning is a dad and a grandfather, a local deacon, and a powerful community spokesperson. He has a small organization called Freeport Haven, and really, really important member of the community, great organizer. Freeport is one of the most polluted cities in the country. It's home to refineries, petrochemical facilities, LNG export terminals, and way too much industry build out. And the community's health has suffered as a result. So we're really grateful to have Manning here and hear about his experience in Freeport. So Manning, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Roddy, for having me here today. My name is Manning Rollerson. I live in the city of Freeport, Texas. I'm the founder of Freeport Haven for Environmental Justice. I got really into climate justice after what happened to the Port of Freeport deciding to declare eminent domain. Well, before I get there, let me just give it a little history. Freeport, Texas have 39 industries within the city of Freeport, Texas. We have three liquefied natural gas facilities. We have one on Surfside and we have one on Quintana Island. We have thousands and thousands of oil pipelines. Freeport sit on 16 caverns of sulfur with crude oil under all 16 caverns, and all 16 caverns is under the city of Freeport, Texas. We have much environmental issues with it. They call them leaks and explosions that's contained within the facility that has no domes and wrought iron fences, and it doesn't make sense how you contain it. But we have a high cancer, every cancer disease that there is, we have it. We have little children last wishes is to be policemen or judges or whatever, and they haven't made it to 10 or 9 years old, they're dying. And Randy Weber is my congressional representative, and Ted Cruz and John Cornyn and all the rest of these characters. Is the agenda to build out in the industry here for the last 47 years. Raising my family, we have been taxed to build this industry. Even when I was a child, we have been taxed to build this industry. But our community is under the federal poverty level. Freeport, Texas, out of all the processing areas in the state of Texas, we have the highest disease rate. We have the highest ozone issues. And every last one of those are lower ozone issues. So there's a lot of toxic poisoning that goes on. And we have a lot of deaths, you know, and to watch the governance of our city just sit back and agrees to increase the dumping and increase the dumping in the waters and just allow the explosions, and we watch our family members die. We watch them suffer. And to say that we have leadership in this country, leadership, I mean, if you look at the death rate and you look at what President Trump told the industry, give me $1 billion, he gonna do whatever they want them to do. Well, they gave him $1 billion, and he doing exactly what they want him to do, is release the restriction. But where does it show that the American government even care about the people? Because before he released the restrictions that came in office, we went to Japan. We talked to JERA. We talked to the Japanese parliament. We talked to every banker that was there trying to get answers about the explosion in June of 2022 of Freeport LNG. And each one of those governmental officials and the industries that invest into Freeport LNG said that there's contingencies. My concern is I have an elected official and I have a state government that knows that there are contingencies when there's willful poisoning of this community, and they don't get the money to take care of the people, but they're watching the people die. So my thing is, when I talk to the Japanese government, is that how can you say that my government is going to make sure our health concerns is taken care of when our government is the one that's complicit into harming its communities because they are permitting this? I cannot trust the EPA, which is not an office no more, but you can't trust them. You can't trust TECQ, you know, because at the end of the day, Freeport wouldn't be in the predicament that it is in today, 57 years later, with Dow Chemical continuously polluting in the river, and TECQ will catch them and hold that said they're going to investigate, and 15 years later, they still haven't come to a conclusion, but then they want to increase the dumping from when they were fined 15 years ago. So they want to increase that same amount of dumping when you find in mercury, you find in copper, you find in zinc, you find in every toxin that there is in the Brazos River. Now you want to give them another permit to increase it. So we're fighting that permit right now again, because at the end of the day, you cannot say that we're going to stop the poisoning of the people and the kids if you don't stop the dumping in the water. Life cannot sustain without water. I've been everywhere. We've been everywhere. And I thank God that I got hooked up with these groups, because at the end of the day, our voice matters. And for those that think that we can't fight back, we can fight back. And we have proven that we can fight back. Biden showed them that the people will fight back. We know we got a battle ahead of us. Donald Trump, as what I told the Japanese government in 2025, in January last year. I told the Japanese government, Donald Trump will be a danger to the world. Donald Trump came as president. The first thing he did is attack the American people. He attacked Social Security, attacked the hospitals, attacked education, attacked our news networks. Donald Trump killing citizens in the middle of the street. I'm an Army veteran. Something that we swore an oath that shouldn't happen in this country. He's killing American citizens. And then you got Pam Bondi that'll sit there and come out and directly lie to the people and don't show no kind of concern for human life. Well, we already know they don't show no concern about toxic poisoning. Renee Goods didn't deserve to die. She was a mother of 3. Jeffries didn't deserve to die. He's a nurse trying to save somebody else. Took a bullet for somebody else, really, because you don't know if they was going to shoot her or not. Where we at in America? Where are we really at in America? Because what I'm looking at is 57 years of taxation, poisoning, the community ain't growing, my children not getting a good education, a lack of good governance. Where we at in America? When I came home as a soldier that got out the military, all I could see is the American dream. Worked hard. And what is the dream? You know, if we don't, and I know I'm not on message, I'm all over the place because I speak, this is the way I speak. But if we all don't come and stand together and push back, what America will be in 2027. Because this is rapid. What's going on? He hasn't been here a year. This is rapid. Stock manipulations, tariff wars, taxing the people. What we'll be at in 2027 under the Trump administration. Where's the Supreme Court at? They're the ones that's supposed to be protecting the Constitution, and we're looking at a broken Supreme Court that's sitting here allowing the presidency, which they shouldn't have gave him immunity in the first place. Everything worked fine. What happened with all the other presidents? Why was so special for Donald Trump? It makes me think that the Supreme Court is complicit into harming the citizens of America, because there's nowhere in the world one citizen should have been shot in the street in this country. Nowhere in the world. One citizen. The Supreme Court is just as complicit. And how are they going to hold up the Constitution when they're just as bad as what the president's doing? The only ones that's holding us together is the lower courts. That's the only one holding this country together. The lower courts. We can't trust nobody else in this country. And it's very hard, and as a citizen of this country, don't know today or tomorrow, if you walk out your house, something blow up, you can die. But then not knowing you can get shot down by ICE in the streets. We have more water balls and blow ups in this community to worry about being shot down in the streets. I might be off, Rowdy, but I told you I speak from the heart. That's what I do. I lost 17 members of my family to cancer. 17. We just lost a little cousin just the other day, about 2 weeks ago. Suddenly just died. We're having people suddenly die around here in Texas. Just young people dying. What is the reason? My mother died from cancer. My uncle died from cancer. Junior, Staten, Betty, and they were under 30 years old. They died of cancer, and they all died right behind each other. We're from South Carolina. How's it possible when it's not in our genetics that my family died from cancer and all kind of respiratory issues after we migrated here to Texas? It shows exactly what Texas is about. And when it comes to the people of Texas, and this is a public service, when it comes to the people of Texas, we know what we have, we experience what we have, and it's time for change. Our children are safe in school. Children in Uvalde will never come back. And that happened under Abbott and Paxton. We must make the right choices in Texas. I can understand they love the jobs, but them jobs, we ain't got good regulations. It don't make no sense to have the job because we're killing ourselves. And none of us is gaining from it. Not one American citizen is really gaining, because when you think you're buying a house, at the end of the day, they tax you out of it so you don't own what you own, that you think you own. So we have to get rid of Kim Paxton and Greg Abbott. They got to go, because those children, they can't come back. And their policies harm more Texas than anything else. So I think the citizens of Texas need to really wake up and look in the mirror and say, hey, we can't go down this road no more, because Abbott didn't do anything that made it better or save the lives of the people of Texas. Thank you, Roddy, for giving me this opportunity. And any questions that I can answer, I will answer. But at the end of the day, this is my solemn swear oath to the American people. I will fight for climate change. I will fight for good water. I will fight to make sure every hospital stay open in this country, because at the end of the day, the doctors is the one that's got to save us from the jobs that we have to work on. So thank you guys for giving me this opportunity.
Manning, thank you so much. So grateful for your comments. And I mean, you know, it's really difficult in this very complicated environment to just talk about climate issues or just talk about any of this stuff. All these issues are connected. And I don't want to get into Q&A part, but John, I just want to respond. Sierra Club does not feel sorry for poor little EPA. We have been fighting EPA every step of the way. The endangerment finding is really important to so much of our work, and we are going to fight to reinstate that, and we're going to keep fighting so that the EPA does what it's supposed to do. And so I promise you that we don't feel sorry for the EPA. Manning, again, thank you so much for your powerful words. I'm grateful for your activism and really your hospitality for hosting us this summer. And just to share one line from Manning, we can fight back, and we will keep fighting. So let's get into the report, because there's a lot of important stuff to cover. So Lalita is our main speaker tonight. Lalita, Dr. Sarah Papini is a really dear friend. She's an assistant professor of internal medicine at the University of Minnesota with a degree in public health from Johns Hopkins. And over the years, she's been an important voice in several of the biggest oil and gas fights, from Line 3 to LNG exports built out in the Gulf Coast. In those important moments, she's brought the public health perspective to our fights and really rallied thousands of other health professionals to speak out. Last summer, a few of us, including Lalita, Claire, Kathleen, who is the brains behind the operation here, is doing all the back end work. We took an 8-day road trip from New Mexico, where we are, across Texas and over into Louisiana, documenting the extreme levels of fossil fuel pollution. And as Lalita will present in this report, as she presents this report, I want you to please keep in mind Manning's story and all the relatives and all the community members that they've lost in Freeport and so many communities around the country. every data point is a human life, someone's child or parent or spouse. And so we're going to get into some numbers and data here, but there's real human tragedy behind each one of these data points. So please remember that, and keep it up in the comment section. Really enjoying your perspectives. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lalita.
Thank you, Roddy, and thanks to everybody for being here and for taking the time out of your evening to join us. So as Roddy said, I'm a physician in Minneapolis, and I've also been a volunteer with Physicians for Social Responsibility. Next slide, please. PSR, if you haven't heard of us before, works to protect human life from the gravest threats to health and survival, guided by our values and expertise of medicine and public health. Our national organization and local chapters across the country mobilize health professionals and public health advocates to advance environmental justice, climate solutions, and a nuclear weapons-free world. So if you're a health professional, or if you know someone in your life who is a health professional, please share this info about us and get involved with psr.org. Okay, so today I'll be sharing some of the findings from PSR's report of fueling sickness. Someone will be putting a link in the chat for the full report and also the one-pager to go over the highlights. Next slide, please. So this is, I made a picture basically that kind of like summarizes a lot of information that you're going to find in the report, tons and tons of studies. If we look at like an overall impact of fossil fuels on health, the global estimate is that there's around 5 to 8 million deaths each year, premature deaths from fossil fuel pollution. And in the US, that would be around like 350,000 premature deaths. And so those numbers are a little hard to wrap your mind around, but another way to look at it is like worldwide, 1 in 5 deaths are from fossil fuel pollution. So this is a slide with lots of information on it, and we don't have to go into super detail. And if there's one like really big takeaway that I want you to have from this slide is that fossil fuel pollution impacts pretty much every single organ in our body. And this impact like starts pretty much from when we're in the womb and goes all the way through all stages of life and puts us in an early grave. So when we look at brain health first, there's like one of the pollutants that's an air pollutant called PM 2.5 or particulate matter, which is a microscopic pollutant. And so even, before you're born, when a pregnant woman breathes in air, this tiny little pollutant gets into the lungs and then into the blood. And the terrifying thing is that it crosses the placenta and gets in to a place where it can affect fetal brain development. And so, even before a baby has taken like a first breath of air, fossil fuel pollution can like start shaping your life. And there's all these other health impacts in children for lower IQ and reduced academic performance, in older people, risks of stroke, increased risk of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Lung health and impacts on lungs is probably what we're most familiar with. But I wanted to draw your attention. So there's, asthma attacks, respiratory infections, and air pollution puts people in the ER, in the hospital, and I've myself like taken care of patients who come in during like really bad wildfire smoke days. And heart health impacts including heart attacks and heart failure as well. But for both the lung and heart health, I just wanted to draw your attention to to causal link. And so that's like a really kind of gold standard thing that we have in science. So oftentimes we can see that there's an increased risk of a particular condition. However, to say that X causes Y, we need a ton of scientific evidence to be analyzed over a different variety of places and a long period of time. And so when we have causal link, it's like saying cigarettes cause lung cancer. It's as definite as that we can say that, air pollution has a causal link to cardiovascular related deaths. And so with that, the opposite is also true, that when we cut down on air pollution, we're actually going to save lives. So there's also impacts to kidney health, as leading to chronic kidney disease and to diabetes, increased risk of diabetes. And as Manning mentioned just now, lots of different types of cancers are associated with air pollution. So in children, especially those living near fossil fuel infrastructure, there's increased risk of lymphoma and leukemia. And there's even in non-smokers, the risk of lung cancer related to air pollution is increasing. And you can see that the risk is also present for workers in the fossil fuel industry. I took care of a patient who was very young, 20-something years old, had just gotten married to his high school sweetheart. He came in because he was having this fever that was just not getting better. And when we did all the blood work, turns out that he had leukemia. And his work was related to basically cleaning out tanks of jet fuel. We know that there's benzene that's present in this that is a known cancer-causing substance. While, as a doctor, I can never really say, in this particular patient, this is the only cause of cancer for them. We know that overall, at a public health level, that, benzene is a cancer-causing substance, and that workers in this industry are at a higher risk because of their exposures. Can I get the next slide, please? And these health impact are, pretty much not just at the end point where you burn. They are right from this point of where you start digging up these fossil fuels. So whether that's coal, whether that's coal, oil, or gas, you right from fracking and drilling and going across to transportation. So sending them through pipelines, for example, refining them and using them for creating byproducts, or finally using them for, in our cars or heating up our homes. So as Roddy mentioned, we went on this road trip, and I wanted to, instead of telling you how bad these health impacts were, how bad this pollution was, I wanted to show you this video. This is from a facility that was making the building blocks of plastics. And if you could play the video, I don't know. That's a giant fire. It's called ground flare by the industry, but I would probably describe it as a toxic fire pit with lots of pollutants that are coming up, and you can hear the sound of that fire. So I just basically put the car window down, put my phone out and took the video. It was the full video is 38 seconds. And then we were going to go on to our next thing. And within minutes, my entire right arm and hand broke out in hives just for exposure of less than a minute. And I can't imagine how it is to, for folks in neighborhoods where these corporations have been set up and they're forced to breathe in this poison day in and day out. Next slide, please. And this is another really shocking areas of pollution I've ever seen in my life, and it's called Lake Beamer. This giant, around 60 acres of area, it's probably better described as like an uncontrolled toxic water leak. So the story behind this is like back in the 50s, there were oil wells that were dug up like all over Texas, and some of them didn't make any oil and they've been abandoned. But in the past decade, many of these wells have started leaking, and this particular one is like producing this water that is mixed with toxins, very salty, has some radioactive substance in it, and high levels of arsenic. And when we play the video, you'll see how extensive it is. And while the video is playing, I'm going to keep talking. But while we like pulled into this area, like even before we could see it, we could smell it. There was a smell of like rotten eggs, like hydrogen sulfide that hits you. And we got out. You could see the cars like in that area. That's where we were. We got out, and within minutes, like I had a headache. Another member of our team just like started having a cough and difficulty breathing, and we had to leave. So these health impacts, next slide please, are not felt equally. Obviously, living, if you're in a community, low-income communities, communities of color, where these industries are cited, they're often more at risk because you're in proximity to the toxins. The impacts are also felt more if you're based on your stage in life. So younger people, older people, if you have a pre-existing illness, if you work in the industry, so you're at higher risk. However, don't want people to think that, this is a problem somewhere else. If I don't live next to a power plant, I'm okay. Because, we are all exposed to fossil fuel pollution, whether that's from traffic, whether that's from wildfire smoke, that is, wildfires that are being driven by climate change. And as you can see from this report from the American Lung Association, almost half of Americans live in areas with unhealthy air. Next slide, please. And there is good news. There's more in the report, more studies in the report, but mainly we see that whenever we clean up this pollution, we stop poisoning our air, land, and water, there's health benefits. And these benefits are both immediate as well as they're long lasting, with most of the benefits being very localized, but also having a benefit to global public health. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Really, really informative presentation. And I highly encourage you all to please open up the links, check out the report, share it with your friends and family. There's so much important information here. Again, I think that this is a lot of information that we know intuitively, right? That breathing pollution is bad for our bodies and it is bad for our kids. And so I think that, our advocacy and our speaking out in combination with solid research like this report, I think that this is really important to our movement and for stopping this industry once and for all, because they really are putting our lives and the lives, especially of Black and Brown communities, they're sacrificing those lives for profits. And so we have to put an end to it. And it's not hopeless. Like, we can get this power back. Again, they have money power. They can buy elections. They can buy governments, but we have people power, and we just have to get organized. And before we get into the Q&A, let's see. I'm going to bring Claire in. Claire Dorner from our federal policy team, and she's going to talk through a campaign that's doing just that. It's bringing people together and organizing so that we can hold these polluters accountable. So Claire, welcome. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone. And if you have any questions, we will have a Q&A portion after this. So just shoot your questions in the comment section. but I'm Claire Dorner with the Sierra Club's federal policy team in Washington, D.C., and I'm here today to talk about the Make Polluters Pay campaign and the state and federal policy efforts that we are pushing to address the harms of fossil fuels. Next slide, please. So first of all, I just want to say that I was fortunate enough to go on a cross-country road trip to see the life cycle of oil and gas with a few of the people on this webinar, and it's very special to be here presenting with everyone, particularly Lalitha, Roddy, Kathleen, who's doing our tech work behind the scenes, and Manning. I was able to travel and visit with each of them along the way, and I think it was very important because building community is part of how we are going to win these fights, and doing that road trip and meeting with these people in person was a big part of building community that we all are going to encourage you to do in addition by taking this action with us today. And next slide, please. So to provide an overview of the Make Polluters Pay campaign, essentially the idea is that the fossil fuel industry has knowingly caused harm to our environment, to our health, and to our community for decades, and taxpayers have been responsible for paying for the damages, and that's not okay, and that's what we want to change. And the Make Polluters Pay campaign seeks to address that by implementing policies that would essentially make fossil fuel companies clean up their messes, including the damage caused by climate-related disasters that are only getting worse by the year. And these policies that we're trying to implement have gained a lot of momentum already, so much so that the fossil fuel industry is working with the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress to try to block any efforts to make the oil industry pay for damages. And the actions that we will take today as a group are seeking to prevent that from happening so that we can continue to fight. Next slide, please. In the past few years, we've seen a record number of flash flooding, including the devastating, deadly July 2025 floods in Texas. That flooding actually took place just days after the road trip group that I mentioned drove through those areas, which is just terrifying, and we saw some really intense flooding ourselves along the way. Fossil fuel pollution and climate change have made rainfall more extreme in general in ways that our landscape can't handle anymore, and that leads to this intense inland flooding. For instance, we saw in August 2024, a single storm in Connecticut dumped over 14 inches of rain in 24 hours and cost $300 million in damages across the state, just from one storm in 1 year. And a year ago, almost to the day, we saw some of the worst wildfires in California history in Los Angeles, which spread toxic, smoke-filled wind throughout the country. And this was also made more intense by fossil fuels. So communities have been the ones responsible for paying for the cleanup of these devastating events rather than the companies responsible because of their fossil fuel pollution. So this is an affordability issue, this is a health issue, and this is a corporate greed issue. Next slide, please. The grief and the loss that we feel about these disasters is very overwhelming on their own, but it makes it worse knowing that big oil has known about this for decades. And you can see in some of these images, these are images of internal documents and some propaganda from all the way back to the 80s. There are hundreds of internal documents that show that big oil has known for more than 50 years that their products would fuel the climate crisis and pose a catastrophic risk. And they did not do anything to stop it because they wanted to continue raking in their profits. And in order to keep their profits up, they lied and spread climate denial and disinformation through the same strategies that big tobacco used in the 40s and 50s to deceive the public. And now the truth is coming out, and communities across the United States are left with higher insurance costs, rising food prices, and expensive health bills related to these increasing climate disasters and pollution issues. And the record profits are continuing, and they're not paying for the damage that we know they have caused. But it does not need to be this way. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of rising efforts across the country to try to address this. States are advancing something called climate superfund legislation, where states are trying to charge fossil fuel companies a fee for their pollution, and that revenue goes into a state-managed fund that supports a range of climate adaptation projects. This is just one part of a solution to address climate change and to address fossil fuels, but it's a very large and impactful project that is going on across the country. So this revenue that states have control over would include investing in clean energy, upgrading stormwater systems, protecting coastal wetlands, retrofitting older buildings, and more. And a significant portion of the funding would be dedicated to communities that are historically overburdened by pollution from climate change, communities just like Freeport, Texas, that impact Manning and his community members. Next slide, please. So how do I know, and how do we know that this is effective and that this is a strategy that can help us win? It's already been working. Vermont and New York passed 2 climate superfund laws in 2024, and about 12 states since have introduced climate superfund legislation in 2025. Additionally, 1 out of 4 people in the US currently live in a community that has a lawsuit against the oil and gas industry to try to hold them accountable for their deception. So chances are many of the viewers on this webinar right now are part of a community that is already fighting back through a lawsuit. And there's a lot of momentum for this, but we have to keep going. Next slide, please. There is a complication that has arisen, and that is the issue of immunity. It shouldn't come as a surprise to any of us that the fossil fuel industry does not want to have to pay for their damages, and they definitely don't want to admit fault to being responsible for these damages. So therefore, the oil and gas lobbyists are encouraging Congress to give fossil fuel companies total legal immunity from any laws or lawsuits that would try to hold them accountable and make them pay for their role in the climate crisis. So we've seen this through 16 Republican attorneys general that have proposed a plan to create a liability shield for fossil fuel companies. And there are 2 states, Utah and Oklahoma, that are proposing state-based immunity bills for the fossil fuel industry. So this is alarming news, but what I will say is that these tactics show that the fossil fuel companies are scared of our growing movement, and they want to try to escape trial by any means possible. And this is a much larger issue than just fossil fuels. This is a larger lobbying effort to give blanket immunity to a range of corporate polluters, including AI companies, private prisons, and pesticide manufacturers. And if big oil and these other companies receive immunity, that limits our available tools to try to hold them accountable. But if we are successful in making polluters pay, it will free up billions of dollars for investment in clean energy, ecosystem restoration, and community resilience. And that is why we are taking action together today. Next slide, please. So they say it takes just 3.5% of a government's population to make lasting change. And while our movement doesn't have those numbers yet, we are going to make our movement grow tonight. We have 1 action for tonight, and in a follow-up email, we will share a lot of other ways that you can participate. But for tonight, if you would take a moment to sign our petition, this is a petition, again, calling for polluters to be held accountable and fighting against the opportunity for them to have blanket immunity from any trials against them. So I would encourage you all to take a moment right now, if you are in a position where you're able to sign this petition. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you all have in our Q&A section coming in just a moment. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Claire. Really, really appreciate it. This Make Polluters Pay campaign is very important, and so please take action tonight. Your voice matters in this, and there's several questions here about what can we do in different policies, and states are doing this, and we need the federal government to step up as well. So please take this action, and let's make polluters pay together. Before we get into the Q&A, and then we do have a couple questions here before we run out of time. I want to ask a favor of you all. We've been doing some of these live streams for over a year now. We do them every couple of months, and we'd love to get your feedback. And maybe this is your first one. Maybe you've joined a few of them now. We'd love to know how we're doing and what kind of info and content you would like to see. So we have a super short survey. And as we kind of talk through some of the questions here, would love if you could just take a moment and please just drop it in. And yes, I think Kathleen, our amazing Kathleen Melendez, is getting that link. So we'll have that ready for you in just a second. The link is coming up in just a second. Thank you. Yes, there it is, feedback forms. So love your feedback there. So let's get to a couple of the questions, and we are going to end at the top of the hour, so we may not be able to get to everything, but we are going to be sending up a follow-up email and can answer any questions we don't get to. But a few minutes ago, and I think this is for Lalitha, Wendy wrote that she needs more information on the hazards of the plants that make plastic blocks. They have one opening near her house within a month or so. And do we have any resources? Is there materials in the report for her?
Yes, yeah, there is a section in the report about plastics and health, but I think I would need a little bit more detail about exactly what plastic building blocks are being made, because there's a lot of different chemicals that go into that, and you know, we can get into like the more specific health impacts. And so if whoever asked the question is able to get in touch with PSR, we can discuss a little bit more. The email would be PSRNATL, short for national, @psr.org.
Great, and we'll drop that in the chat box as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And so another question, you know, there have been studies in the past, and I think PSR has written about this in the Health Consortium and other documents. But I'm wondering if you can talk more about the link between flaring and preterm labor, and what should people, you know, need to be aware of living near plants and facilities and oil fields where flaring takes place. Is that something you can speak to?
Yes, yeah, it is very, the answer is yes. Like there's been association because with venting, they're releasing methane gas that does come with its own, because natural gas is like mixed with some chemical substances that fall into the category of volatile organic compounds, and one of them is benzene, which can be cancer causing. But flaring is like when you're burning it, and so there's, you know, in addition to carbon dioxide, there's particulate matter, there's other chemicals like NOx. So it has been yes, associated with a lot of complications with pregnancy. But when it comes to advice, I think it becomes really difficult. And this is, you know, because the advice for any type of like environmental impact would be to like move yourself away from it, which is like not possible when it is, you know, someone has set up shop like next to your house. But, you know, having an air filter in the house to like improve air quality would be something that I would recommend. There's now purple air monitors that if, you know, that community is able to afford, you know, setting some up so that because oftentimes when we check, we recommend people to check air quality, but that could be like very far away from where the pollution source is. And so setting up an air monitor in your community, keeping track of how much pollution is being produced so that, you know, people who are producing this can be held to account by local and state authorities would be another way of like collective action within a community. Because I've seen that like being placed outside schools or outside like a prominent, like a community center or something like that. But yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. And just one last question. You know, I know that there are links in here to actions for health providers. And so maybe if there are people watching who aren't necessarily associated with PSR yet and want to get involved, what are the best ways to do that?
Yeah, I think like PSR has both the national and like local chapters all across the state. So like oftentimes getting, you know, look up if you have a state level chapter and reach out to them, or, you know, join us and send us an email on the PSR website, and we will work to connect you, you know, with the local chapter as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you again to PSR and everyone involved in this report. It's such it's so important to all of our advocacy and for really getting the data behind things that we are already fighting. With that, time to close. If you haven't had a chance, please go and take our survey. We'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts on these live streams and how we did tonight. And before we sign off, I've mentioned her name a couple times. Kathleen Melendez is our national digital organizer for Sierra Club, one of them, and she's just brilliant and works behind the scenes so diligently to help us pull off the tech side of this. And so just really grateful for all her hard work and for all that she brings to this team. And again, thank you to Lalitha, to Manning, to Jasmine and Claire for all your work tonight and sharing all this really important information. And thank you to you all for coming and watching tonight. We ask that you please share this link. You can take the YouTube link and share it with your friends and family. And we look forward to the next one. So thank you for engaging in the fight for climate and environmental justice. And together we're going to take our government back and make polluters pay. Have a great evening. Thank you.